Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to today's media roundtable to discuss U.S. Transportation Command's commercial aircraft cabin aerosol dispersion test and findings. I'm Captain John Perkins, and I will be moderating the 30-minute roundtable. Please, with regards to this, for the media members, please ask specific questions pertaining to this study. Questions outside the study will be coordinated with U.S. Transportation Public Affairs Office following the media roundtable. If you do have a question, please select the icon to raise your hand. I will call on you and unmute your microphone. Because we have quite a few media members attending today's call in limited time, please just ask one question. If we have time, I will go through and ask some follow-up questions. We have on today's media roundtable, if you will, that are joining us is Vice Admiral D. Mewborn, U.S. Transportation Command Deputy Commander. With him is Commander Joe Pope. He is U.S. Transportation Command's Operations Director Liaison, for this test. We also have Dr. Van Giesen. He is with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA for short, if you will. He is the Program Manager for their Biological Technologies Office. We also have Dr. Joseph Santarpia. He is the Research Director at the University of Nebraska's National Strategic Research Institute and Associate Professor at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. And we have David Silcott. He is from S3I and is one of the authors of that report. With that, we'll start off the roundtable with opening comments from Vice Admiral Mewborn, as well as Dr. Van Giesen and Dr. Santarpia. With that, I will turn it over to Admiral Mewborn, sir.
Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of General Steve Lyons, the Commander of U.S. Transportation Command, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's media roundtable. I'd also like to thank Dr. Eric Van Giesen, Program Manager at DARPA, and for being a very close ally as we've gone through this study. Our mission at USTRANSCOM is to conduct global logistics operations on behalf of the Department of Defense. Part of that mission involves moving military personnel, civilians, and families around the globe on contracted commercial flights that we call Patriot Express. We invested in the aerosol particle study to better inform us how to complete the mission of transporting our passengers within this pandemic environment while maximizing their safety. The test was conducted over an 8-day period in August on United Airlines Boeing 777 and also their 767 type aircraft, with sensors measuring over 300 iterations of aerosol releases while real-time mapping the dispersion aboard the aircraft. Within the scope of the test, the analysis showed an overall low exposure risk on these aircraft from airborne pathogens like COVID-19. The favorable results are attributable to a combination of the airframe's high air exchange rates, the high efficiency particle air, meaning HEPA filtration recirculation systems, and the downward airflow ventilation design, which results in rapid dilution and purging of the disseminated aerosol particulate. We will use the data to enhance our understanding of how to provide the safest possible transport for passengers on board our Patriot Express flights, in addition to the other mitigation measures we currently employ, including our screening process, limiting in-flight service, and requiring masks to be worn while on the aircraft. Following today's media roundtable, the report will be archived on bioRxiv. It says as an unpublished preprint available to the scientific community. The report is also available for download on our website at www.ustranscom.mil. The authors plan to reformat the report for journal submission, and after peer review, intend for the study to be published in a scientific journal. We at USTRANSCOM thank our partners at DARPA, Boeing, United Airlines, and those working under contract for Zeteo Tech, S3I LLC, and the University of Nebraska's National Strategic Institute for their coordination and cooperation with us as we continue to make our motto possible: together we deliver. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Eric Van Giesen for his opening comments. Dr. Van Giesen.
Thank you, sir. And at DARPA, I just want to point out that in this example, this is exactly what we try to do at DARPA. We try to answer the mail from the combatant commands and other parts of the DoD that need a technology solution to address a real-world problem. In this case, what we did was we worked back as early as March in response to General Lyon's request for a solution or an answer to what is the exposure risk in aircraft during transport, either Patriot Air Express or on military aircraft. And what we do at DARPA is we bring the best researchers in the world to solve these problems. We bring them together and we tackle the problem as fast as we possibly can. And then we take the technology and hand it to our partners in the operational side of the military, such as TRANSCOM. In this case, we worked with Zeteo Tech, we worked with National Strategic Research Institute, and we worked with S3I to bring the best of breed. These people that you're going to hear from later are people who are some of the best researchers in the world in aerosol science. And we developed methodology with them and with partnership with TRANSCOM and Air Mobility Command in a series of experiments starting in April and continuing through the summer that worked with military aircraft and commercial aircraft to develop a methodology that now was used by our partners, USTRANSCOM, in this latest set of tests that Admiral Muirborn just referenced. And so the latest set of tests answer a very critical question about cabin occupant exposure risk in a set of military aircraft. And you'll hear from the scientists who actually did the experiments as to what those limitations were and also what the findings were in this. But I would just say that we are very happy to be able to support this and perform our mission as a technology developer that can then provide an answer to a real world problem to the operational community. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Santarpia for his opening comments. Over.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I wanted to thank DARPA and TRANSCOM for supporting this effort, and I want to express my amazement with how quickly and how much work we have been able to do in this area over the course of the last, well, since the pandemic began in March. It's really been an impressive display of how quickly we can mobilize scientific resources to answer a problem. And I really like Dave Silcott and Sean Kinahan are both on this call. They were the two primary people in the field supporting this work, and I want to absolutely recognize them and the team of folks that supported all the work that's been done. And I don't have anything further. I think everyone else said everything pretty well.
Thank you, Dr. Santarpia. Captain John Perkins here again. I will go ahead and open it up for questionings. Just a reminder to note, I will have to unmute you, so please give me a second to unmute you as I call on you. With that, we'll start with Associated Press, and David, unmuting your mic now.
Just real quickly, reference to military aircraft, but these were these United the 777 and the 767, were they altered, or were these in a layout that might be seen when they're used for commercial passenger service?
I can take that question. Commander Joe Pope here. So these were line flyable United Airlines 777s and 767s. So the reference earlier to military aircraft, we did a round of testing. AMC led in April that tested AMC military aircraft, but this specific round of testing in August was for commercial aircraft, and we chose two aircraft that we frequently contract for our Patriot Express flights.
Great, thank you for that response, Commander Pope. Now I will go over to Rose Thayer with Stars and Stripes. I have unmuted your mic.
Hey there, thank you for putting this together. Just a question, if you could sort of talk about the difference between when the mannequin was wearing the mask versus not wearing the mask.
I think Dr. Santarpia or Mr. Silcott, if you could expound on a little bit of what we learned there. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll let Dave or Sean take that question first.
Okay, so we did both breathing and cough simulations on the aircraft. We found for the cough simulations there was a very large reduction in aerosol that would come out of the mannequin, greater than 95% for most cases. So it was definitely showed the benefit of wearing a mask during in flight from these tests.
Great, thank you, David. Now moving over to Ian Duncan from Washington Post, unmuting your mic now.
This is for Admiral Mewborn. I think, is TRANSCOM going to be changing any of its policies or the way that you do business as a result of these findings?
Hey, Ian, thank you very much for the question. Not sure yet, 100%, right? But what I think it gives us the potential to do is to examine probably several policies. We certainly can look at a max loading policy. Right now, we've been restricting between 80 and 90% of loading on our Patriot Express. We did so several months ago in the middle of the summer because we didn't know better, for one, and we wanted to maximize the safety of personnel on board, the passengers on board. And so we thought, well, you know, if we somehow reduce the amount of loading, then that might reduce somehow the probability of risk exposure. You know, I think the results of this will, we certainly will examine that policy. The other one we'll examine is contact tracing. I think when you have a chance to download the results, you'll see that the highest, first of all, the seat right adjacent to you has an immediate drop off in the concentration levels to where that seat, there's a greater than 99.9 something% drop off in the seat next to you. And so certainly in this, you know, after you get outside of a few seats, then it drops off to, you know, you can't measure it. It's at the baseline level. So I think we should examine the need to do how much contact tracing would really be required. Third thing would be post-flight quarantine, right? If you had someone that you thought was positive on board an airplane, then right now you probably would be maybe even overly cautious as to the number of people that you would place in quarantine, at least in the military, DoD. And I think we'll be able to examine that policy. And then I think wearing of the mask, this showed us that there's an advantage to wearing the masks on board. Clearly, for the larger particulate matter that might come forth, you know, from a coughing event. And then I think finally, ECS operation. Again, when you read the report, there's great benefit from having the ECS system run in the recirculation mode, and then so when you're on the ground to have the unit turned on, right, that allows that max filtration on the ground is probably something that also will be a benefit from the analysis coming out of this study. If you don't mind, since it's such a great question, let me just ask if any of my colleagues would like to either correct me or amend or corroborate what I said. I'll start with Joe Pope.
Just to add, the operations directorate is examining the results and coming up with any policy proposal changes currently. If David or Sean want to comment on the contact tracing, the big key is this report looked at aerosols and not ballistic droplets. So the mask is very important in that the larger droplets that travel ballistically through the air will be caught by your mask. And if you don't have the mask on, then you cannot reduce those number of ballistic particles, which then there is some exposure risk subsequent. And Sean or David, if you want to expound.
Captain Perkins, it'd be beneficial if you could unmute Sean Kinahan, that we could, he studied the contact tracing.
Yep, we'll do. Wait one.
Thank you. Do you want me to expound on that a little bit?
If you could, Sean.
Yeah, sure. So, right, I think that's the important thing. There's a lot of other groups looking at the efficacy of masks for these large droplets, kind of that radius around you, right, the point of the social distancing. If somebody's eating or drinking or talking and they're right next to you and they're not wearing a mask, that's not part of this study at this time. And those large droplets do not become an aerosol, so they don't get caught up in the ECS air handling system, and instead would just travel like an arc, in the area around a patient or an infected person.
Ian, I hope that answered your question fully. Thank you for it.
Yes, thank you, sir. And now turning over to Tara from McCluskey. Unmuting you now, over.
Hi, thank you for doing this. I was wondering what you think the larger implications could be for commercial air travel. Since United participated, are they going to be similarly releasing this and trying to rebuild consumer confidence in air travel?
Yeah, Eric, can you answer that, Dr. Van Giesen?
I did want to jump in on that because I think it's an important question to address. From the commercial travel perspective, what this study provides you is with a foundational set of data that the commercial aircraft industry can utilize for modeling applications. And this is something that David and Sean and Josh and Commander Pope and I have talked about quite a bit. No one has generated this level of understanding of aerosol movement in aircraft. You can go back to 2005 when David Silcott started doing it for DHS, but that was an early study, and this is a very comprehensive study that he's been able to continue and build on that work. And now there is a data set out there that the commercial and private industry can utilize to provide boundary conditions and a deeper understanding of air movement in the aircraft, which then can feed modeling efforts, computational fluid dynamics modeling efforts that can explore perhaps scenarios that we did not address in these particular aircraft. But it also creates a foundational experimental methodology that the commercial industry can use. So I think that if we want to talk about implications, I think those would be the most scientifically relevant implications. I think expanding and making conclusions beyond what have been stated in the report, that would be something we would hope doesn't happen, and that this is instead fueling more detailed experimental work that the commercial and private industry can take advantage of.
Thanks again for the question, Tira.
Yes, thank you, sir. Now going over to Sam from ABC. Unmuting your mic now.
Hi, good morning. I want to talk about some of the variables. If you could explain some of the caveats within this study. It appears that, the mannequin is sitting in the seat facing forward, but on a plane with real people, people are moving about, they're unbuckling their seatbelts, they're going to the restroom, and then on the long haul flights, they're going to be eating and taking their masks off. Can you explain how this study looks at those variables and how the outcomes would change when we see those types of activities?
So that's I'll start on that. That's an excellent question. So the study isn't without limitations. So like we said, initially we looked at a single passenger. We didn't simulate passengers moving about the cabin. We did not look at the end-to-end transportation piece of you start on a bus at the terminal, you're hanging out in the lounge, and the airflow in those situations. And frankly, you're correct. We didn't look at passengers move about in the cabin and talk to each other. So while it's detailed and we're very encouraged by the results, that's part of the reason why we're making the results public and sharing them with the scientific community so that follow-on research can be done. Technically speaking, the results are good for these two aircraft in the conditions tested. However, there's a lot of follow-on work that we can draw from this to get at some of those very specific questions. If anyone has any follow-up to that.
Yeah, well, Sean or Josh maybe. Or
yeah, Josh, if you can add a little bit there.
Yeah, I think that was well said. Every study has its limitations, right? And these things like people getting up and moving around, the impact of someone even really turning their head to talk at the person next to them. These things, there's certain things you just can't study in these kinds of contexts. And so this was a foundational study to look at sort of some fundamental distributions on aircraft in a common situation. It wasn't meant to represent every possible situation you could be in on an airplane. And as Commander Pope said, there's any number of situations that were not represented by this study. So yeah, I think taking the data out of context or overgeneralizing it is fairly dangerous in terms of trying to draw conclusions from that. So I would, we do a good job of caveating the study appropriately in the report, and I think those caveats are important to maintain.
Hey, Sam, thank you very much for the question. Very good.
Yes, thank you, Sam. And now going back to Tara, I see you have your hand up. I am unmuting you now. Over.
Thank you. I had just had a follow-up, but didn't realize that there was a button to say, ask again. So thanks. We're all learning. I wanted to just clarify, Mr. Silcott, did you say with a mask it was 95% protection against the or blocking the particles when there was an aerosol emitted? And then related to that, for the mannequins that were not wearing masks during this, did you see aerosol particles on them? Like, how much of a protection did the mask provide people from the particles in the air? Thank you.
So I'm not sure how to answer that specifically. Do you want to help there on that one, Josh or Eric?
Yeah, sure. So I think the implication there is that the concentrations observed in in some of the testing were significantly less when the mask was being worn under the coughing conditions specifically. In terms of how much protection a mask offers, that wasn't a part of any of the testing that we did. That's really more, you would have had to have like a respiring mannequin or something like that to look at exposure in that sense, and that's not what was done. So like the protective ability of a mask wasn't looked at, really just the reduction in how much, and really that reduction was looked at in a very broad sense in terms of the overall reduction in particulate that we observed in the study when the mannequin was wearing a mask or not. Is that reasonably correct, Dave?
Yes. Yeah, and one of the reasons for having the mask on, mask off also was to look at any kind of lateral dispersion of the aerosol exiting a person while wearing a mask. So it was a very fruitful data set collected on that because that's one question had to be answered for the aerosol dispersion test. How much comes out the side of the mask and above, and how does that impact how it transports through the aircraft was being looked at with by applying the mask.
Great. Hey, Tara, thanks for that question. Now going over to Ariana from military.com. I'm unmuting your mic now.
Thanks, all. I see toward the end of this study how the distribution varied depending on the area for which a passenger was sitting in the airplane. And I'm curious if there was an actual conclusion on what perhaps the safest place is on a plane to sit and what that data shows whether a person wears a mask or doesn't wear a mask.
So the overarching conclusion from the study is that all areas of the aircraft, on both aircraft, proved to be extremely effective in dispersing and filtering out the aerosol particles. So specifically, can I tell you sit in seat XYZ? No, they all performed very well. The data was very encouraging, what we observed.
Thank you, Ariana, for that question. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Van Giesen.
I think, Dr. Van Giesen wants to add something.
I wanted to add a quick caveat too. Again, I'll just refer you back to Dr. Santarpia's comment about the mask versus no mask question. That wasn't the purpose of the study. So I don't think we can make a strong conclusion about anything relating to mask versus no mask in terms of risk on the aircraft, other than to say follow the guidance that is already provided, from the CDC and the DoD for mask wearing.
Great. Thank you, sir. I see, Ian, you have another question. So going back to you on unmiking your night from Washington Post, over.
Sorry, I feel like we might really be belaboring this mask question, but if I'm understanding this right, were you primarily looking here at particles that are small enough that they could go through the wearer's mask and not these bigger droplets that the mask, I think you say in the study, are generally pretty good at catching? I mean, is that the right way to think about what you were examining here?
Sean, if you want to take that.
Sure. I think a couple things. Absolutely. Predominantly, we were looking at small aerosol-driven transport, not large droplet, not that projectile style of transport. As far as filtration efficiency, yeah, there's a lot of studies on that. But to David's point, one of the things about the smaller particles too is that they'll follow the air streamline. So they'll follow the air around the sides of the mask, to get back to David's point about looking at dispersion, not just forward without a mask, but also to the sides. But again, that gets into some nuance on large droplets versus aerosols, and this study is entirely aerosol driven.
Great, Ian. Thank you for that question. I see Sam has one question, another question, excuse me, a follow-up with that. I will look to have this be the last question. Unmuting your mic now, Sam, over.
Thank you. Is there any plan to have this study peer reviewed? And can you tell us if it is an independent study, or were there other financial contributions from companies like Boeing or United?
I can.
Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
Well, so there is a plan to have it peer reviewed. In fact, we're going to post it for as I mentioned today, and many people, it sounds like, already have gone out to our website to pull it down. And then, as we mentioned, the authors want to put it in a journal format, and then we're seeking to put it a journal that's interested in and doing the peer review and then publishing it. We would ask for them to do it, with some alacrity, so that we have the information, once peer reviewed, out into the hands of the scientific community and public, within a short time frame. There was no, the DoD paid for this study. That was one of your questions. It cost roughly $1 million that we paid for here at TRANSCOM with we have a research and development budget. And so we use that money, we think, for a very good purpose here to advance the body of knowledge on the behavior of this virus on a form of transportation that we all have come to rely on. So I think that answered your full question. Please come back to me if I didn't answer it fully over. What's the nuance?
So, sorry, United Airlines did donate the flight time on the aircraft towards the endeavor. So they partnered with us, and Boeing had engineering reps available to answer questions to the scientific team. So USTRANSCOM didn't send any money to United through Zateo for the flight time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, everyone. I'd like to thank you for your participation in today's media roundtable. Before we end, I will go around to our participants for any last comments. I will start with Sean Killahan. Do you have any final comments over?
No, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity from TRANSCOM and DARPA. Thank you.
Sean, appreciate it. And over to Dr. Santarpia. Any last comments from you, sir?
Yeah, just one final comment. As we start this preparation of what you'll find if you look at the report is that it's a very large report. There's a whole lot of data. As we move towards a more publication-ready manuscript, you're going to see a lot of additional synthesis of this data, which we're still doing right now. And so, that's just as a word of, we're not changing it, but we do have to, the conclusions of the study won't change, but some of how it's presented will likely change.
Great, thank you. And over to Dr. Van Giesen for any final comments over.
No comments from this side. Just thanking TRANSCOM for the opportunity to collaborate.
Thank you, sir. And over to David Silcott. Any last comments? Over.
Same for me. Many thanks to TRANSCOM for funding this effort. We do think that we collected a very robust data set for future researchers to really analyze, and this data will be useful for this problem to get a better understanding of it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silcott. And over to Admiral Mewborn and Commander Pope for any last comments. Over.
I would just like to say thank you to everyone for their tireless efforts. There was long hours put in by the test team, both during the tests and then after, in crunching the data and making the report. So very appreciative of all the hard work done by the team.
I would just want to say thank you very much to the media outlets that are here. I encourage you to tell the story, to pull it down and read. I just remind you to please, always talk within the context of what we tested and not what we didn't test. And every test has boundaries. And so we try to fully articulate that today carefully, for your benefit and the benefit of the readership. We're happy to take, if you have any other questions, I know our PA team is standing by and you can contact them. We want full transparency with these results. We're very proud of the scientific engineering rigor that went into the analysis that we did, the tests that we did, and we want it to be peer reviewed so that people have confidence in what they read. We admit fully that in transportation in an airplane, you have to probably consider the end-to-end risk exposure and not just while you're sitting in a seat. And so there are plenty more, a lot more analysis that could be done as it relates to, just how safe air travel is or is not, because, you have to travel to the airport, get on the airplane and so forth, and then the truth at the other end. But, and there's also, as was mentioned in here, that there was things that we did not test for because we couldn't, we would still be testing, so we chose to baseline and to provide that information, share that information in hopes that others, will look as needed in those areas that we didn't test for. But I want to thank you. You've given a lot of your time and attention just to be here as part of this roundtable. And I would say that from TRANSCOM's perspective, we're very appreciative of that. I think that's all from me, John. Over.
All right, Admiral Mewborn, appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you for everyone for joining the media roundtable. With that, I will end this starting now. Thank you.